I find people fascinating for all different kinds of reasons, but certain groups of people are doubly fascinating. And one of those groups happens to be collectors. People that collect things, I find them just incredibly interesting. People that are passionate collectors that collect all kinds of things. Whether they collect stamps or they collect coins or they collect comic books or bottle caps or spoons, whatever it may be. When people collect those things, they're pretty excited about that. There's a woman I read about that collects pencil sharpeners of all different kinds. Of what an odd thing to collect, but she collects them so that her kids have something to throw away when she dies. I just thought that was hysterical of a reason why people collect things. See what I mean? Collectors are pretty neat people. Or when my son, my third son, when he was about 4 years old, he had a collection, and his collection was quarters. And every time my dad saw him, he gave him a quarter. And then one day, when he was about 4 or 5, my dad handed him a quarter. He handed the quarter back, and he said, "Poppy, I don't collect quarters anymore. I collect dollar bills." And that was the change there too. Like I said, collectors are pretty interesting people. And we collect for all different reasons. I think my son was collecting just to build a bank account, but I have a friend that lives on Lake Erie, and he and his wife walk the beach and collect sea glass. And then they bring it home and they place it in this glass vase on their coffee table, and it creates kind of like a home decor art. They collect it, they preserve it. It's pretty cool. I mean, people, like I said, collect things for all different kinds of reasons. And the reason that I then find them so interesting is like the passion they have for their collection. I mean, they're serious about it, and if you ask them about it, you find all of this detail that they have and insight, and they'll tell you about it over and over again, and they'll fill you in on things you never knew about, spoons or bottle caps or whatever it may be. And although the collections that people have are varied, there is one thing that kind of runs through everyone that is a collector, and that is this. I could sum it up with two words. It's they're passionate and they're all about preserving their collection. They're passionate about their collection and they want to preserve it. So passion and preservation sums up collectors all the way through. Again, they know their stuff about, they're passionate about it, and if you ask them, they will tell you, you may be blown away by how cool it is, or you may be bored to tears. It all depends on the situation. But they are passionate for sure. And on top of that, they are preservers. Like if you collect coins, you put them in coin sleeves. If you collect comic books, you keep them in comic book protectors. Or you collect spoons, you keep them in a special box. I mean, you get the idea. But all collectors have that in common. They're passionate and they're preservers. My question is this: why? Why do we have this thing in us? Well, I believe God wired us this way to be passionate preservers. God made us a passionate preserver. It's wired in our soul. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure Jesus teaches that this is true. He tells us plainly that that's what we are. Not about stamps or coins or whatever, but about something far more life-changing, significant, and eternal. Let me show you what I mean. We're going to go back to Matthew chapter 5, and we're going to start reading at verses 13 through 16. So if you have your Bibles, I encourage you to grab that. If not, you can follow along on the screen. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. In this portion of Scripture, Jesus is telling us that you are a passionate preserver. You have passion and preservation. And even though he doesn't use those terms, let me show you what I mean. Let's go back to verse 13, and we're going to take one more look at verse 13. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It's no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. Now, salt can't lose its saltiness, but so Jesus is saying if that were ever to happen, it would be completely useless. But don't miss this. He says, you are the salt of the earth. Don't just read past that. You are. And as a follower of Jesus, this isn't negotiable. This is what you are. This is what you are wired to be, salt of the earth. So what does that mean? What does it mean to be salt of the earth? Well, today, if I heard that term, I would think about somebody that would be maybe steady. You know, salt of the earth would be a steady person, or somebody that's unassuming, or maybe traditional. Like, that would be my idea of a salt of the earth person. Is that what Jesus means, though? Not quite. Well, we have to understand in Jesus' time and culture, going back 2,000 years, what was the purpose of salt? Well, it really had twofold purpose. Salt was to preserve. It didn't have refrigeration, so the first reason would be to put like meat in salt to preserve it from decay. Okay, so salt is a preserver. And then just like it is today, the second reason would be salt is a flavor enhancer. It enhances what's already there and makes it better. We add salt to things and it makes it taste better. Other than like people put salt on watermelon. I don't get it. I mean, the only thing worse than that is pineapple on pizza, but I'll leave that alone. But salt enhances flavor either way, and we get that. So when you think about it that way, and Jesus says you're the salt of the earth, then that means you're a preserver and an enhancer. Oh, well, that now just changed things a little bit. He means you are an enhancer and a preserver of the earth, because you are the salt of the earth. So is Jesus talking about like green initiatives here? No, not really. When he says you are the salt of the earth, he means like your country, your neighborhood, where you move about, physically where you move about, where you live, like your workplace, your home. Here where I live in the Capital District of New York, that Capital District would be the earth to me, where I move and roam and interact with people, where you live. And so as a follower of Jesus, you are the salt of where you reside. You are the enhancer and the preserver of something better where you reside. And you are that to the people around you. And the people around you does include your neighbor that you don't get along with. The people around you does include your sibling or your difficult coworker or your atheist friend or your weird uncle. All of those people are included in that because that's where you move. You're the preserver. But the question remains, preserver of what? To those people, where you move, where you're placed, salt of the earth. Remember, Jesus is saying this to his followers, so that's who's hearing this, to preserve and enhance life. Okay, so I'm to take the life that we have and preserve it, but enhance it and show people something more. What's more? Well, Jesus says this in John chapter 10, verse 10. I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. So, we are to preserve life and life to the full. You and I then are to be Jesus to the people around us and show them that this life isn't just this life. There's something more to it. To preserve what we have, that Jesus is saying, the message that he has to preserve that, and to show people that it's more than what we can just see with our basic existence. To demonstrate to life that there is a way that we live that does not operate by the generally accepted standards of our culture, and to preserve the life and life to the full that Jesus talks about, that's under constant pressure to fade away, to live life differently than the world around us. You and I are to preserve this to the people around you, to preserve and enhance the message of Christ. To not let it be pressed away, and to let people see it in you and in me and say, that's something better than what I'm living, life and life to the full. And we do that to the earth, where we live, the people that we move about. And again, that does include the rude clerk or the person that cut you off on the highway. It's a tall order. And just in case you miss what Jesus is talking about, or they missed it that day, he doesn't just say you're the salt of the earth and leave it there. He actually adds some clarity. And in verse 14, he said this to bring clarity. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. You are the salt to the earth and the light to the world. Now, did you notice that slight shift that Jesus makes there? He says you are the salt of the earth. He doesn't say you are the light of the earth. Well, again, earth means the place in which you move and live. But when he says you're the light of the world, what does he mean then? That's a slight change. What is he talking about? Well, the world, when he says it that way, he's talking about the world system, the culture, the way things operate. So in other words, you are the salt of the earth and the light of the world. The place that you're located and the culture that's there, you are the light to it. You are to show them something more. The culture of your workplace, the culture of your home, the culture of your neighborhood, where you live, the place that you reside in. And he's talking about the manner in which it operates, the way that people think, which you and I then, as followers of Jesus, are to demonstrate a worldview that isn't always in line with popular cultural thought. And we are to demonstrate a plane of higher thinking, a level that's higher expectations, that demands more of us, a life that demonstrates a radically different behavior than what may be happening around us. How can I be so sure that Jesus expects us to live differently? Well, for the rest of chapter 5, 6 times Jesus says that you have heard it said, but I say to you. In other words, he's saying to the people then, the Jewish people that he was speaking to, you heard about the law, but I'm going to amp it up and show you it's even greater than that. Like one of the instances he says, if you commit adultery, don't commit adultery. And then he says, if you look at a woman lustfully, you've already committed adultery in your heart. He just amped it up. Culture says this is okay, but I'm telling you there's something more. You see, Jesus would say to us today, I know what your culture says, but I say. And that's the way we're to live our life. Live in that light of what Jesus says. Yes, we're called to something more, to be a light of the world, to be illuminating to something more. And to do that have a passion, because we believe it and we know it's true. Now here's the other side of that coin, to be totally honest with you, is it's going to cost you something. It's not always easy. Like, to be honest, sometimes you have to pay for that. It costs to be honest. To forgive somebody when you're wronged is the light of the world. It's not always easy. To be generous is a way of life. To love others when they are difficult, which means, yes, to be patient and kind to people. As I've shared many times, if we're just patient and kind, we'll change the world. To serve others and not look for a reward. This is what it means. You have heard it said, but I'm saying to you. This is what Jesus is saying to us. And to serve others and not expecting them to do that for you. I've once heard it said about Christians in serving. Christians are all okay with serving until they're treated like a servant. And then everything changes. Look, I know this. Jesus was treated like a servant and worse, and he still continued to love people. Look, I don't think I'm telling you today anything you don't already know. I don't think Jesus is telling us anything we didn't already know. But the question is, and this is a kind of like a poking question, is this the way you're living your life? Acknowledging that you are the salt of the earth and you are the light of the world. That responsibility falls on you and on me as a follower of Jesus Christ. Is that how we live our lives in a world of an increasingly loveless world? Are we adding love to it? A light that shows that there is something better. There is something greater, a light that will share with a passion that there is a life and life to the full, something greater than you can experience just in the ordinary. Passion because, like the collector, you love what you collect. Do you have that passion for the message of Christ? And a preserver because you can't let something valuable be cast aside. And the value that we're talking about here is salvation and forgiveness and a transformed life through Jesus Christ. We cannot let that be pressed out of our culture, and you cannot let that be pressed out of your family, your workplace, your home, whatever it may be, your neighborhood. That's the passion, and to preserve the message of Christ everywhere we go. You see, what Jesus expects from you and what he expects from me is to live counterculturally. That's what we're supposed to do in a world system that we're surrounded by that's moving the other way. To live with a fervor, to live with a holy confidence, to live with a passion, to be the light. Now, one final thought. And I really appreciate this about Jesus. He just uses logic to make sure that we understand what he's asking and expecting of us. Going back to Matthew chapter 5, verses 15 through 17, listen to what he says. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. Jesus starts there by saying, look, it doesn't make any sense to be lit and then hide that light. You would never do that in your home. You would never turn the lights on and then cover them up. It doesn't make any sense. And he's saying that's the same with you and me. We are to live that way and to be passionate about that. That's the light. Let it emanate out of you. Let it illuminate from your being, that people see Christ in you. It's okay. And yes, it is countercultural and not everybody's going to love it, but there will be people that will receive the message of salvation and hope and transformation and discover it through the way you live your life. Because Jesus says we are to illuminate our life. And in that portion of scripture I just read, that our life is to be so different and startling to the world around us that people see God in you and they glorify him. They may not go and say that, but they're like, there's something different about you. And as a follower of Jesus, we are passionate preservers of the message of Christ, the message of salvation, of hope, of forgiveness, and transformation. My final question for you is this: do the people around you see that in you? Are you the salt, the preserver, and the enhancer where you live? And are you the light to the world system, the way people around you think? Are you showing them something else? Something about life and life to the full, to a higher plane? Because remember, Jesus says, you have heard it said, but I say. You and I are to live in the I say. We are preservers, and I trust that we're passionate preservers of the message of Christ to those close to us and those sometimes we just bump into, and maybe those that we work with. But the tough question to reflect upon is, do those people see you